The flight attendants had just finished their safety demonstration when a weary-looking man lowered himself into seat 12F. To most passengers, he was just another traveler, tired eyes, a wrinkled shirt, and a child's drawing poking out of his carry-on bag. No one noticed the slight stiffness in the way he sat, or the scars that peeked from under his sleeve when he adjusted his seatbelt. To the world, he was just another single dad, quietly trying to make it through the day. But within hours, the skies above would reveal a truth that would leave hardened fighter pilots standing at attention, their eyes filled with respect. High voltage. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the quiet heroes we often overlook, please take a moment to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with others, and subscribe to Kindness Tales. Your support helps us spread more stories that touch the heart. For years, Daniel Rivers had been living in silence, carrying the weight of memories too heavy to share. A former U.S. Air Force combat pilot, he had flown countless missions in the F-22 Raptor. His call sign, Falcon, once echoed across radios, a name that carried both fear to enemies and reassurance to those he protected. But after a tragic accident claimed his wife's life, Daniel walked away from the military, determined to raise his little daughter, Madison, on his own. He had exchanged the roar of engines for bedtime stories, the battlefield for ballet recitals, and the honor of service for the quiet sacrifice of single fatherhood. Yet, despite his efforts, the world never stopped testing him. Daniel struggled to make ends meet, juggling long hours at a civilian flight school with the endless responsibilities of fatherhood. Every day was a battle between exhaustion and determination. Some nights, he'd sit by Madison's bed, watching her sleep, wondering if he was enough. Wondering if she would ever understand why he had given up everything. His heart carried scars far deeper than the ones on his skin, the scars of a man who once had a purpose greater than himself, now reduced to fighting invisible wars of loneliness and regret. This flight was supposed to be simple, a trip across the country to visit Madison's grandparents. She had been excited all week, packing and repacking her little backpack with dolls and crayons. But to Daniel, it was more than a journey, it was another reminder of how fragile his world had become. He worried about every detail, the cost of the tickets, whether Madison would be comfortable, whether people would judge him for being alone. By the time they boarded, he was drained, barely holding himself together. As the plane climbed into the skies, Daniel leaned his head against the window, the clouds rushing past like ghosts of a past he couldn't escape. Madison giggled beside him, coloring, blissfully unaware of the weight her father carried. He reached for her hand, grounding himself in her laughter. She was his anchor, his reason, his everything. But at 30,000 feet, the quiet hum of the engines broke into a crackle of the intercom. The captain's voice carried urgency. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've been advised of restricted airspace ahead. We may be intercepted by military escort until clearance is granted. Please remain calm." A ripple of unease spread through the cabin, passengers exchanging nervous glances. For Daniel, it was different, his pulse quickened, not in fear, but in recognition. He knew what was coming. Minutes later, 2 F-22 Raptors appeared outside the windows, their sleek forms glinting in the sunlight. Passengers gasped, some reaching for phones to capture the rare sight. But Daniel froze. His breath caught in his throat, memories flooding back, every mission, every maneuver, every brother in arms. These weren't just jets. They were a part of him. The captain's voice came again, uncertain. "We've been asked to provide crew verification. One passenger on board has been identified. Seat 12F, Mr. Rivers, please make yourself known." Heads turned. Passengers stared at Daniel, confused, curious. Madison squeezed his hand, whispering, "Daddy?" He swallowed hard, his heart pounding. Slowly, he unbuckled, standing in the narrow aisle. The flight attendant handed him the intercom, her eyes wide with questions. Daniel hesitated, then spoke two words that carried the weight of history, sacrifice, and brotherhood. This is Falcon. Silence swept the cabin. For a moment, nothing moved. Then, outside, the impossible happened. The two F-22s adjusted their formation, dipping their wings in unison, a gesture of honor reserved for one of their own. Over the radio, crackling through the cockpit, the voices of young pilots trembled with awe. "Falcon, sir, it's an honor." Inside the cabin, passengers watched in stunned silence. Some clutched their hearts, others whispered. No one fully understood, but they felt it. This man, the quiet father in seat 12F, was not ordinary. He was a legend, a protector, someone who had once carried the skies on his shoulders. Daniel's eyes welled with tears as he glanced at Madison. For the first time, she looked at him not just as her daddy, but as someone extraordinary. The escort continued until the plane cleared restricted airspace. Then, with one final wing dip, the F-22s peeled away, leaving behind a cabin forever changed. Daniel sat back down, shaken, overwhelmed. Passengers leaned in, offering handshakes, words of thanks, but he barely heard them. All he could think about was Madison's small hand still clutching his. She looked up at him, her eyes shining. "Daddy, you're a hero." Those words pierced deeper than any medal ever had. For years, Daniel had questioned his worth, doubted his ability to be enough for his daughter. But in that moment, he realized something powerful. Heroism wasn't just in the skies or the battlefield. It was in the quiet resilience of getting up every day, of putting someone else first, of fighting battles no one saw. He hadn't failed Madison, he had given her the best gift he could, a father who never gave up. When the plane landed, passengers applauded, not for the captain, but for Daniel. Some took photos, others simply nodded in respect. Word spread quickly, and by the time they reached the terminal, even the ground crew seemed to know. But Daniel remained humble, carrying Madison in his arms, whispering promises that he would always be there for her. That night, as Madison slept peacefully at her grandparents' house, Daniel sat alone on the porch, looking up at the stars. He thought of his fallen comrades, of missions that haunted him, of the life he had left behind. For the first time in years, though, he felt peace. He realized that the world might never fully understand his battles, but his daughter did, and that was enough. Life did not magically become easier after that flight. Daniel still faced struggles, still wrestled with doubt, still worked long hours. But something inside him had shifted. He no longer carried his past as a burden. Instead, he wore it as a reminder that he had been tested, broken, and rebuilt, not just as a soldier, but as a father. Months later, Madison would draw a picture of that flight for school. It showed a plane, 2 fighter jets, and a little girl holding her father's hand. At the bottom, she wrote in clumsy letters, "My daddy is Falcon. He's my hero." That picture found its way to Daniel's desk, where it stayed, reminding him every day of what truly mattered. Blue Heart, if this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of the unseen sacrifices made by quiet heroes among us, please show your support. Like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and don't forget to subscribe to Kindness Tales for more real, emotional stories. And before we end, I have one special request. Please comment below with the word respect to honor not just Daniel, but every unsung hero who quietly carries the weight of love, sacrifice, and duty. Because sometimes, the greatest heroes aren't the ones in uniforms or cockpits, they're the ones sitting quietly in seat 12F, holding the hand of a child who thinks the world of them.